15. Lucky number. I guess we'll just start then. So today we are talking a bit about my legal troubles. And I figured this would be the ideal, not really time, but way to do it. Because that's a really easy thing. It's a really easy thing to slip into trying to control it too much. And I think it's good that we do it in a way that you're not controlling it so much, because this is exactly the sort of thing, I don't know, it feels more natural just sitting down and hammering it out, speaking it out this way. That way you can't dramatize. It's dramatize, right? Not dramatize. It's not dramatize. Smoking a little bit, drinking a little bit, in a really uncomfortable location and manner, because this is uncomfortable and it'll keep you uncomfortable. And frankly, I want to hear the way I speak when I can't go sentence by sentence. Doing some Jacob fucking Jones shit. And we might be here for a little while, so vodka, platinum, and Swisher Sweets wood tips. So, following COVID, when schools got shut down, that's when all this started happening. I've been following COVID in advance thanks to Jim, found out about it early. Really freaked out because I still don't know what happened, why China's version was so fucked up and ours was not as fucked up. I don't know what happened there. But I thought it was the end of the world, or going to be the end of the world, coming out of one friend doing something really shitty to me, and then me doing something shitty back, but not owning up to any of it. One important friendship done. And then another important friendship, or what I thought was going to be an important friendship. We didn't really get that far into it. That ended up being done too. Because before all my legal shit went down, you go through evolution. Some are faster than others. This was before I had any huge life-shattering evolutions in my life. And what I really wanted was to be as important to someone as someone was to me. And that's never going to happen. Not just for you, but you'll never value the people who want them, or want you to value them, and vice versa. And I was drinking a lot. Walking around day drinking with a flask in classes a lot. Please God, let this thing still be running. Yep, still running, okay. Anyway, so we get the And somewhere in there was a bad breakup also. So 4 things at once if you had what you think is the apocalypse on top of it. Then you get your go home orders and not really in a good spot mentally or emotionally. Fucking cold. Anyway, I tried to, when I got back to my hometown, I thought it would be a good idea to try to reconnect with some high school friends. Now, one of them was the one that I was really close with, but I was shitty to him, and he was shitty to me, and if we ever were to talk about it again or to try to plead what was going on there in court, he'd probably be able to make it sound like he was this ultimate victim. But he was a piece of shit too. He was just more normal, so better at lying or blending in. But again, not trying to act like I was a good person. I was shitty to him. Absolutely. And then the other one was one that we were shitty to together, whom I thought was this simple, better than both of us, better than all of it guy. Anyway, so I try to I start reconnecting with them online. Well, it was made clear to me that I'm a sack of shit and I need to do this and that. And we're doing you a favor by being your friend or giving you another chance. I fucking hate that. The needing to prove yourself to somebody. Yes, I was a sack of shit. You're a habitual or compulsive liar. You abuse people. And I didn't appreciate that framing very much. But again, when you're isolated, you're alone, and you haven't built up that hatred and sadness armor, you do whatever. You put up with it for a while. Now, I don't remember all of what happened, but it got to a point I wasn't going to deal with it. And, wow, Jesus, God, stepping into it. Oof. So I was going to ghost both of them, but the other one, he was talking about going into therapy and dealing with his problems and stuff, so I, in parting, said to him, or messaged him, and I said, I think you're a good person. You go to therapy, I'll go to therapy, we won't be talking anymore, but maybe that'll be our mutual support without actually interacting with one another thing. And I'm guessing he interpreted that as a suicide thing, which I thought it was clear that that was not what was going on. I was sad emotionally because that was another group of people that I was walking away from. So I was drinking that night. A lot. And then the other one, the shittier one, tried to call me, didn't text me, didn't message me, tried to call me. And I didn't answer because I didn't want anything to do with them. They made it, when you make it clear that either you don't want to interact with someone or you want to interact with them in a way that you're controlling them and treating them like a piece of shit, You don't want to talk to him. Now, little did I know he called the cops and claimed I was committing suicide, and that there was no indication of that. And as a courtesy thing, you would think you would, if that's actually what your intention was, you would let them know. You know, you would say, we'll call him. We'll text if you don't get a call, or if the call doesn't get picked up. We'll get to this. I'm pretty sure that was not a kind-hearted thing. Anyway, so I don't realize that the cops are coming. So a while later, I start hearing noises outside, dogs barking, a lot of activity. And at the time, my family and I, we lived in the middle of nowhere. We lived in, you don't come back here unless you're trying to steal shit zone. And that's usually what was going on. Meth was a problem in our area, or in that area, I should say. So people would sneak onto these boondocks homes and steal shit. So I figure that's what's going on. So I grab my shotgun, which is unloaded, by the way, because at that time, I had a weird thing about all that. I would rather get shot at that time than I shoot someone. And not even on a moral level, I was afraid of law enforcement. I didn't want to go to prison for trying to defend myself, just kill me. But my mother had nightmares regularly about people breaking in and doing terrible things to her. So I have to do something. And it was pretty normal in that part of the country, that area, to walk around with guns. Just to, communicate that this is not a place. If you're at this place, this is not a place you're supposed to be. You're not welcome here. An intimidation thing. So I grab my shotgun, and I'm wasted. It's 3 a.m, and I notice my parents are at the door. Now, again, this is not unusual for a family member to walk up with a gun when strangers or something weird is going on. That's pretty normal. I'd seen people do that my entire life. My family had done that my entire life. It's normal for someone to walk up with a gun to communicate that nothing wacky should be going on. And they looked scared. So I get to the door, and my father yanks the shotgun out of my hand, and before I can realize what's going on, it's a cop there. He has his gun drawn, and he's screaming at me to get down. And I try to comply, but he's doing the, put your hands up, rub your stomach, pat your head, recite the alphabet backwards shit. And as this is going down, I'm thinking, this is it. This is over. He's got his gun on me. I don't know what's going on. I don't know why it's happening. But this is the end. So then I'm lying there, and then a bunch of cops roll up. And I'm not even thinking about why that might be. But then a bunch of cops have their guns on me. People are screaming. And I lose it. I don't do anything violent, I just start screaming. And I've thought about, it's weird because with most of your memories, all your memories are kind of always active. You're always thinking about them, even if you aren't thinking about them. That's a memory I don't think about unless I am sitting down to think about it. Is this still going? Okay, it's still going. It felt like watching somebody else die. Because that's one of the few times in my life that I have not at all been in control of myself, and I felt like I was watching somebody else snap, screaming incoherently. Now, and everyone has their guns on you, and I remember an older cop showing up and talking to me and getting everything back into a more civilized mode. And at this time, I didn't know that you should not talk to cops ever. Ever. So I'm trying to explain what's happening to him. Some time passes, I get arrested, and it's that original first cop who's going to take me in. And I remember being driven away, and again, all I can think is, this is over, this is it. It's done. It's all over. But you don't have the benefit of being dead yet. So he starts talking about how, oh, that was the other thing. He read me my Miranda rights, but he had to do it off of a card. And then he ended up telling me that he's been on the force for not very long, but he's already been involved in shootings and all this fucked up shit, and he's acting like a tough guy. And then he says he's turned off all of his recorders and recording equipment, and it's just me and him. He starts trying to get me to say that this was supposed to be a suicide by cop thing, which I denied immediately and emphatically. That was not, suicide was not on the table that night. I didn't realize what was going on, but I declare, and I explained, why did you go to the door with a gun? I announced I was law enforcement. Well, I didn't hear you. It's 3 a.m, drug problems, thievery problems in this area. The gun was unloaded. None of that matters, of course. But see, I thought turning off the recording equipment was supposed to be a positive thing. And I had it in my head that if I was just honest, everything would be fine, because honesty would work everything out. At that point in my life, I still believed that. So we get to the facility. More cops come out, and they get me to tell them what I told him. And I complied. Stupid. They focused on the gun a lot, which I was not thinking about. They brought out a therapy type person who was going to do some kind of wellness, I guess, are you insane check. That one's done. Let me grab another. And then, if I'm not mistaken, how did this go? It's really fucking cold. I really like to be sitting down. Anyway, I think they brought me in. I don't remember if that's when they booked me. I know I had to get naked and put on the... I think that was when they booked me. I had to put on the jumpsuit in cuffs. And then I remember them talking, and I was sitting there. And someone yelled, "Book him. Book him," in that fucking southern accent. Now, my timeline is fucked up because I know there were two legs of this. We'll focus on this leg for now. I remember them asking me if I was drunk, and I was telling them I was sobering up. But then they said, "Are you drunk?" And I said, "Well, I'm sobering up." I reiterated that. And they said, "So, no, you're not drunk." And I said, "Okay, no, I'm not drunk," which, another bad thing. You shouldn't do that. I remember... And this either happened after they drove me around or before. But at some point, I was in my jumper and they drove me around. And they were going to try to put me in a mental institution for however long. I think it's 72 hours, and then they were going to proceed with my case. But because COVID was kicking off, and I was in a paddy wagon, because COVID was kicking off, every single mental health facility was filled up, so they could not stick me in there. Which ended up being a good thing in the long run. But then they drive me to a hospital because I guess they need to do some kind of mental health check. So they were going to get some nurse to do it, just a random nurse. So we're walking up to the ER, up to this huge hospital, and it looks like 28 days later or something. There's all these hazmat people in those cellophane tents. And I'm thinking, okay. And again, this is when COVID was going down. All right, we're going into a hospital as COVID is kicking off. I'm going to get COVID and die. Anyway, so they have me chained to a bed for 8 hours. And while I'm chained to the bed, I watch this woman who I'm assuming is homeless, or if not mentally ill. She didn't strike me as a druggie, just not there. And she's pacing back and forth, talking about how she has to go back to her family, how she has kids to feed, this and that. And it looked like, to my eyes, nothing set anything off. But 5 cops walked in and grabbed her, and one of them had his fucking gun out. Again, screaming into the guns. And this isn't an ER. You know, this isn't cop zone. And she's screaming, they're screaming, one of them has his gun out. So they inject her with something and then she passes out. Terrifying. Again, obviously she wasn't all there mentally, but I don't know what triggered that. Anyway, this really kind nurse comes over and speaks with me. She gives me some Gatorade. Very sympathetic, very empathetic maybe. Kind, maybe she deals with cops all the time. She gives me a clean bill of mental health. I'm fine. And I was. The moment they put me in that car initially, my mind got very clear, even though I didn't know how to deal with cops. So then they bring me back and stick me in a cell, and I grabbed a newspaper on my way in. There was one sitting on the bench, and I just picked it up and snuck it in so I would have something to read. And this one cop, this fucker, was just there being evil, talking about, like, muttering they should have killed me. And that younger cop, tough guy, he would have killed me. They emphasized that multiple times, that they would have killed me. They should have killed me. So I'm in there reading this newspaper for about 2 days. It's hard to sleep when you got these lights on, beating down on you, institutional room. Some kids got arrested, younger than I was, for something. I heard they got separated. I listened to one of them in the cell next to me crying all night. Another dude who was obviously had autism or something, big canned ham hands guy. They have him chained to a gurney. They're rolling him around, and he's freaking out and just saying autistic things. Fuck. And they pull a gun on him, screaming at him. One of them tases him while he's not tied down, but chained down. And that's another thing, by the way. When you're being cuffed is not fun. When you're wearing the shackles, it's a completely different story. You talk about feeling like you're watching yourself. I watched myself have this moment. You think mind is over matter. You think you're a rational person, reasonable person. I realized I couldn't move, and chimpanzee brain kicked in, and it took everything in me not to just start freaking out in my shackles. You think you're above that kind of thing until it's happening to you. And all you can think is, again, your life is over. You are now at the hands of an institution run by the sort of people who hates you, has always hated you, wants to kill you. You turn into an animal. So about 2 days pass, because it was on the weekend. And they line you up and they read you your charges. I don't know what the legal term is, but there's a line of people just getting read their charges. And getting assigned a public defender whom you don't get to meet with. And they assign you your bail. Now, when it was my turn, they charged me with aggravated assault on an officer with a deadly weapon. And I was shocked because that was not at all what happened. And I'm not going to mention my bail. Fuck it, I'll mention my bail. It was $10,000, which, in hindsight, doing reading, looking back, that was not a lot. So maybe somebody knew something was fucky, I don't know. But again, you don't know how bail works when you don't know how to deal with cops. I don't have $10,000. My family doesn't have $10,000. I didn't realize you'd pay a percentage. So my public defender, he was this skinny, tan, Hispanic dude. He tried to take my bail down to $7,500 and the judge denied it. And as this was happening, you're appreciative, but at the same time, you don't have $7,500 either. And you watch cop shows sometimes, you understand how this works. So you're going to be serving some significant amount of time before you even get to your case. And everyone was talking about how COVID is making things take forever. So this could be a very long time. It's freaky. Two and a half cops in there were relatively nice. My family got in touch with a lawyer. Sold my car, understandable. Sold stuff, understandable. Appreciate it. But acting like I'm a villain, a burden again, and I'd never, at that point in my life, call me a piece of shit, call me a whatever, followed all the rules, didn't drink in public. Drinking was my big vice. And that was the other thing. They asked me if I was an alcoholic. And I said yes. Because I was and I am. And one of the things they imposed was if you drink between now and your sentencing, whatever it is, 5 years mandatory. Which I still don't understand how that works, how they can do something like that. But good. Ended up being good. 2 cops were okay. The dude who dealt with me at the hospital, he was okay. We had a good conversation. He was nice. Then I guess one of the office guys was also relatively nice. He was kind to me, he was respectful to me, and he said if, he treats people the way they treat him, and I've been easy to deal with and respectful to him, so he's easy to deal with and respectful to me. He loaned me his phone so I could call my family when they let me out. But as they're letting me out, that fucking tatted up cop again comes in again, talking about how if he were there, he would have killed me. And just in my face. So I get out, and then the case starts happening. But not immediately. Cases don't happen immediately. Cases take years, by the way. So I met with my new lawyer, who was okay. I did addiction counseling, which was good. My counselor was really useful, helpful, and kind. She got arrested she was growing marijuana on government property in the 80s so she could buy coke. And that's when she got arrested. That's when she turned her life around. She was very helpful. So, time passes, can't sleep, miserable, thinking that, still feeling like your life is over. It's worse when it's up in the air. Is this thing still running? Please, God. Yep, okay. It's worse when it's not set in stone. Because at least when I was in the cell and I was thinking about what life in prison was going to be like, you can at least start wrapping your mind around it and trying to figure out how you're going to deal with this. It's a lot worse when you don't know, but you're pretty sure it's going to be bad based on the way people are acting. So I got to read the file that cop put together, which I found out a different cop wrote it, but he lied in the report. He said that I was for sure trying to commit suicide by cop, which was shocking to me because I stated emphatically, repeatedly, no, that was a lie. That's not at all what was going on. But then I realized the recording equipment was off, so there's no record of me saying no. And they put in a bunch of other stuff, like to make me look like a fucking deranged person. I mentioned in our conversation that one of the reasons I went to the door with a gun was because we've had, druggy people roll up and doing fucked up shit and actually stealing things a couple times. And my mother had dreams regularly about people breaking in and raping her. I mentioned that. Why do you go to the door with a gun at 3 a.m? Because you don't want your mother to get raped. Crazy, I know. But they put that in there. They didn't mention anything about the drug people or the thieves, of course. And it was just shocking to me that they're allowed to disable all of their accountability equipment and make it your word against theirs. Shocking to me. So it's my case looks really bad. And that's when I started thinking about juries, a jury of your peers. You mean the peers who hate you, who don't understand the fucked up things cops can do, who are automatically on cops' sides, who, if you go to trial, don't want to be doing jury duty? So I get into therapy, and that's good. That ended up actually being very good, but of course my health insurance, after it was all said and done, wouldn't let me continue with it. Get another smoke. Jesus. And my attorney was telling me as much. This is not going to go well. The dude who called the cops on me got in touch with me. And the first thing he asked me was how prison was. And then I remember he started trying to lecture me and talk to me like I'm a piece of shit again. But once again, when you're in these situations, you cling to anybody you can. So the intention before all this was to ghost them. Now I'm dealing with them again because you don't have anybody else. So my case goes on for a while. I'm still in university at the time. I'm closing out my bachelor's. Doing finals with a case hanging over my head. Time passes. There was a lot of stuff that went on. But it's cold and it doesn't really matter. But it came out my prosecutor was a new prosecutor who I guess, had lost some cases, so she needed to win something. So she was not going to be reasonable about this. And that's the other thing. Nobody I spoke with thought any of what happened was justified except for the dude who called the cops on me, including cops. Within that own precinct, even. But it doesn't matter. So I pled no contest, and the deal, no contest is not, you're not pleading guilty, nolo contendere. You're pleading whatever the court wants to do. The deal was a year of probation and an apology letter to the cop who arrested me and lied, which all things considered was very lucky. All of it was very lucky. And in my apology letter, I didn't really apologize, or I didn't apologize for what they wanted me to apologize for. I apologized for the way everything happened, which I guess was enough. And one of the people who really helped me in my life was the head of my department at my university. I graduated, I got my bachelor's. And what are you going to do while you have a year of probation hanging over your head? I asked him about a master's program. And he, upon his own initiative, didn't know me anything, just said, don't worry about it. You're in. You won't have to pay tuition. I'll help you set up a scholarship, which he did. You have to pay for housing and all that, but tuition you don't have to worry about, which, huge blessing. So I'm doing my probation, doing my master's. And that's at the point I ghosted those two people who called the cops on me. And that entire time I was dealing with them, they were just very smug and flippant and happy. So I had a feeling that was maybe an intentional thing. Or maybe it was done with the idea that something bad might happen to me. Maybe it wouldn't. But they're really glad it did. Malevolence. And I feel confident that's the case because I ghosted them after that, after however many, maybe it was a year or something like that. I was trying to do a Christmas stream, and they dropped in and were mocking me. So, because I was doing tarot during the Christmas stream, free tarot readings. I was just getting into it. So, pieces of shit. I got to do my probation in my university town, thankfully. Probation is weird, though. Is it still running? I keep checking. Yep. Is the battery looking okay? Yep, battery's okay. I had to sign in, not to the probation, but to announce that I am in this area with the police department. And they got all my biometrics, and this black woman just looked angry at the world. Asked me if I was a resident, and I said yes. And then she asked me where I was arrested, and I said I wasn't arrested. And she said, "You just said you was a resident." And I didn't realize that her language, she meant arrested. She said resident. Maybe she said arrested, but it sounded like resident. So that was spooky. Just this fucking... Cops really like screaming. She didn't pull her gun. Cops like screaming a lot, even in okay settings, safe settings. Probation went okay. My probation officer was actually very pleasant. I had to take a piss test, though. And it's got to be some kind of autism or something. Not autism, but something. I got punched in the back of the head one time as a kid while I was pissing. And I've always had problems pissing ever since then. It's an effort to take a piss, even now, and I have to piss constantly. So it's just upsetting every day. Anyway, so you're in this little stall with this 6'2" black dude, or Latino dude, tatted up with the meth-looking eyes. He's a cop, of course. And I'm standing there trying to piss, and he's so close to you in such a confined space, you can feel his breath on your neck. And I was panicking. Pissing was not going to happen. And I was trying to force it, and I fucking farted in his face. It was a small fart. But I farted in this fucker's face, and he freaked out. Halfway understandably, but, you know, the women, I saw women, well, I didn't see women taking piss tests, but women don't have to have a cop in there while they're taking their piss tests. I don't know. Anyway, my probation officer, again, she was another black lady, but very teachery, if that makes sense, but a sadder, if that's possible. So she let me do a spit test thing, and that was fine, but that was terrifying. And every time I would go in there to that office to do my probation, terrifying, but you get into a rhythm, it's okay. But, you know, who are your friends when you're an alcoholic? And I stopped drinking altogether at that point. Other alcoholics, constantly wanting to drink. And one of them ended up having a legal issue with it. Shocking the way this stuff turns out. Legal issue relating to alcohol. Always trying to get me to drink. What does he do the moment he's out on bail? Some kind of similar you shouldn't drink thing. He starts drinking. Retelling it all, it's weird. When you aren't putting it into words, it's this monument of fear and terror. And this went on for years, by the way. Again, this wasn't like a week or even a month or 2 or 3 months thing and then you get your probation. It was a couple of years to get that probation. And you're constantly terrified of what's going to happen to you. So, and I'm terrified of it feels like a monument because it's so awful. I would rather die than go through something like that again. And sometimes when you say stuff like that, you can feel you're exaggerating or know you're exaggerating, and maybe I am exaggerating, but on every conscious level, maybe that unconscious level, that animal level would take back over and not want to die. But on every conscious level, I don't want to deal with that again, ever. And it feels like just talking about it is going to make it happen again. And Oh, let me pour a little more. Pour a little more vodka. Hold up. Eddie Nowak, Invisible Stripes. It's a song about the way you're never, unless you got your records expunged or sealed, which is not an option for me. That was the other thing. That's the other difficult thing, is this is just going to be there forever. I ended up getting sentenced to resisting arrest without violence, so I'm not a felon. I was charged with a violent felony. And even on your credit checks from now on, anyone who gets your credit check will see not just what you were sentenced to, but also what you were charged with. And they can charge you with anything. That's another thing I learned. You can get charged with murder. And if you plead it down, even if you plead it down to jaywalking, your charges will still show up as murder. So that's something you're walking around with. Anytime you're doing anything involving money or legal stuff. Cop pulled me over, and I say sometimes you can tell when someone has seen your record and you have an ugly record. Thank God I've gotten pulled over only once since then. But the cop knew. And sometimes people know. I don't know how people, I know your records are public record. But sometimes it seems like people will just find out, and you can tell when they found out. Usually. Not always. People are very tricky. So, anyway, I'm thinking about all this. And you're connected, like Slim, he's not my boss anymore, but former boss. Vietnam veteran, lifer dude. He fraternizes with military people. They understand each other. People have all these sorts of different fraternities that they link up with. And you would think my fraternity, informal fraternity, would be academics, English people. That's not the case. It's it's criminals. When you're charged and you don't get your record sealed or expunged, you are forevermore a criminal, even if you aren't a criminal. And that makes you, they don't give you the option of returning to normal. They want you to continue to be a criminal, even if you aren't one. I don't have the criminal skill set, unfortunately. But that's my fraternity. I had good conversations. I have good conversations with people who have dealt with the law. I had great conversations with the probation office, and it's all sorts of people. They are your brothers and sisters. You aren't allowed any other brothers and sisters. It never goes away either. I still have nightmares about it sometimes. And it's weird when you have something like this. It's PTSD, but I don't want to call it PTSD. Because PTSD, you think of either soldiers getting their legs blown off or teenage girls getting broken up with. This is a weird in-between. But knowing you're going to live the rest of your life weird about stuff. I get weird whenever cops are around. I get weird whenever I find out people have cops in their family. I get weird around other criminals. Other criminals. And you're gonna live the rest of your life like this, and I think I'm handling it pretty well. Even though I feel weird, and I'm sure I act weird on some level, it doesn't control me like that. I'm not sure how to word the other ways it controls me. But this is something that's never going away. And if nothing else, it gives you empathy for people who have experienced things that are never going to go away, whatever that might be. We talk about Mussolini sometimes. He appealed to the Arditi. World War I was when the looking glass shattered. Chemical weapons, incendiary weapons, artillery, automatic weapons, and all this. These dudes walked in with knives. That's what they were known for, their knives. They fought World War I with, not entirely with knives, obviously, but you see the Italians in old historical footage showing off their knives together. That's what that is. I'm weird about veterans who enlisted, not were drafted. Draftees are a completely different story. But if nothing else, empathy for them going through stuff they're never going to live down. It's weirder though when it's when what you've gone through that you'll never live down was imposed on you by the systems you were led to trust, and that you were fucked most by because you trusted them, because you were honest, because you believed in honesty. Which is why I have so much sympathy for draftees and other people like that, other criminals. And it's hard. Thankfully, it's not like Patrice O'Neill. He got accused of rape and spent the rest of his life walking around labeled a rapist when he didn't rape anybody. At least I can play my charges up like I'm some kind of badass. I'm not. But it's almost like they want you to. And if you ever get into legal trouble again, you're fucked. And it's not like you fuck up and then you have legal problems coming after you. Someone can just call the cops on you, and that's it. The wrong moment, that's it. So you live the rest of your life in terror that institutions you were raised to believe were there to protect you could kill you at any moment and want to kill you. And the damnedest thing is, that wasn't a random thing, what happened to me. That's the way these institutions work, and that's the way life works. Someone decides it's time to fuck you, you get fucked, they fuck you, and then that's it. You can't do anything about it because you're one person with no resources and no knowledge. That's the way things always work. That's another reason why Duce appeals to me. And not just him, but people like that. People who get fucked and decide it's time to do something about it. Not in some fucking crazy striking back at the world level, but on an institutional level, like Hemingway. We talked about Hemingway yesterday. Using art to try to change the way people are so we can not do stuff like this to each other. Or taking over your government so stuff like this can't happen to you because you are not the fucked, you are the fucker against the people who were the fuckers. I'm missing out on a lot, but that's the gist. Maybe one day we'll go into more details. And there's so many little details, but when you're standing somewhere freezing, it's hard to recall them all, and oftentimes it feels fruitless to recall them all. Another thing about people like this, it's like they brainwash you. The more they repeat their version of a story, even if you know what the truth is, the more they repeat it and the more other people accept it, the more you feel resigned to agree with their version of the story. It's like some Big Brother shit. My father. Never forget, first meal we had when I was home, I was eating. First thing he said to me, do you know what that tastes like? No, Dad, I don't know what that tastes like. That tastes like freedom. Criminals don't get freedom. I guess that's it then.